My brother stole my inheritance. After I covered his debts, so I took legal action and left him with nothing he could touch ever again. I'm a 27-year-old guy, and for most of my life, I've been the responsible one in my family. While my friends were out partying or chasing weekend thrills, I was clocking extra hours at my two jobs, morning shifts at a local warehouse and evenings as a delivery driver. Money was tight, but I budgeted everything meticulously, making sure rent was paid, bills were covered, and groceries never ran out. I never complained. I told myself this was what being a good son meant. My parents never had to ask. They just assumed I'd handle it. Then there's my brother, Liam. Everyone adored him. The charming, charismatic kid who could talk his way out of anything. He never worried about money because he always seemed to have a fresh emergency. Credit cards maxed out? No problem. Overdrafts piling up? I'd quietly cover them. And every time, he smiled, threw me a casual thanks, and went back to his reckless ways. My parents never scolded him. They just sighed and said, "He'll figure it out." The inheritance always lingered in the background. My late grandmother, who I was incredibly close to, had left me a sum specifically for my education and a secure future. She had made it clear this was mine alone, my reward for staying disciplined, for being responsible when others weren't. My parents kept reassuring me, "Don't worry, it's safe. Nothing will touch it." But over time, I started noticing subtle whispers behind closed doors, hushed tones whenever I walked into a room. A glance that lingered too long from Liam. A door shutting abruptly when the topic came up. Despite that nagging unease, I felt proud. Proud that I was the one keeping the household afloat. Proud that I was careful, disciplined, and reliable. Loyalty, I told myself, would always be recognized eventually. And for now, I believed that the sacrifices I made were worth it. But even as I brushed off the whispers, a tiny knot of doubt twisted in my stomach, one I couldn't yet name. I never minded helping Liam when he got into trouble. At first, it was small stuff, covering a forgotten utility bill, bailing him out of an overdraft. But over the years, the favors became bigger. Credit card debt, loan payments, even a mysterious emergency he wouldn't explain. I'd sit at the kitchen table, counting bills late into the night, silently calculating how I could cover him without going broke myself. I told myself it was family, that this was what responsible siblings do. But the exhaustion was starting to pile up, a heavy fog I couldn't shake. "Hey, can you cover the phone bill this month?" Liam asked one evening, leaning casually against the doorway, grin plastered on his face. "I'll pay you back next week. Promise." His tone was light, but I caught the flicker of entitlement in his eyes. I sighed, already, knowing how this story would end. "Fine. Again," I muttered, sliding my card across the table. My parents, of course, stayed blissfully unaware, or maybe they just didn't want to see it. "He's just irresponsible. Don't take it personally," Mom would say. "You've always been so dependable. Thank goodness for you," Dad added, giving me a nod that felt more like pressure than praise. Their words should have comforted me, but instead, they dug a little deeper, a reminder that I was expected to carry the weight of everyone else's mistakes. The whispers behind closed doors continued. I started noticing Liam deleting texts, slipping out of rooms when money was mentioned, a glance that lingered too long when I brought up finances, early warning bells that I shoved aside. I kept thinking, I trust him. He's my brother. It'll be fine. But late at night, staring at my spreadsheet, the unease gnawed at me. Covering Liam's debts had become routine, but there was a subtle shift. I felt less like a helper, more like a walking ATM. And deep down, I wondered how long loyalty could keep me safe. The next morning, Liam called again with a new emergency, and I realized this wasn't going to stop on its own. It hit me one evening just how differently Liam was treated compared to me. He could walk into the living room wearing the same clothes for days, leaving dirty dishes everywhere, and Mom would coo, "Oh, he's just busy being creative." My sacrifices, the overtime shifts, the careful budgeting, the countless nights I skipped dinners to make ends meet, were never acknowledged. Meanwhile, Liam was charming, effortlessly flitting through life like he owned it, and the family ate it up. Every compliment, every small victory, no matter how trivial, was magnified for him. I felt invisible, like my responsibility had become expected, almost invisible. "Come on, don't be so serious all the time," Liam said one night as I sat tallying the bills. He leaned back, grinning, spinning a pen between his fingers. "You worry too much. Just enjoy life a little." His words should have been innocent, but they stung. I wanted to shout that I didn't have the luxury of enjoying life, that I carried the weight of his mistakes too. But instead, I nodded silently, swallowing my frustration. At first, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it wasn't personal. Maybe this was just how our parents were. But the pattern was impossible to ignore. Liam was always forgiven, always praised, always protected. And when he asked for money, it came with an unspoken expectation, a sense of entitlement that I couldn't shake. I began noticing the sly ways he manipulated conversations, making it sound like I was being stingy or jealous. The whispers in the house grew louder, not in volume, but in tone, a cautionary murmur that something was brewing. Late-night phone calls, closed doors, a lingering glance whenever the inheritance was mentioned. Small part of me, the rational side I tried so hard to maintain, told me to ignore it. But the unease had started to creep into my chest, twisting with every act of favoritism I witnessed. I sat back, rubbing my temples, and thought, how did loyalty become weakness? Before I could answer myself, Liam left the room, tossing a casual, "Don't stress so much, you'll see, it'll all work out," over his shoulder. But I couldn't shake the feeling that what he meant by all wasn't in my favor. It started with little things that didn't make sense at first. Files missing from the shared family folder, a letter from the bank that Liam forgot to mention, and the way he subtly avoided any talk about the inheritance. I brushed it off initially, telling myself I was being paranoid. But the unease in my chest kept growing. Something about the way he smiled too easily when money was mentioned, or how quickly he changed the subject when I asked about bills, didn't feel right. I felt like I was seeing him for the first time, and it scared me. One evening, I caught him glancing nervously at my laptop while I typed out our household expenses. "What are you working on?" he asked, a little too casually. I looked up, forcing a smile. "Just the usual, making sure everything's covered," I said. He nodded, pretending to understand, but the tension in his jaw betrayed him. It was like he knew something I didn't yet, something I couldn't yet see. I started noticing other subtle signs, too. He'd disappear for hours, return with excuses that didn't add up, and delete messages off his phone in a way that made me uneasy. Late at night, I began to replay conversations in my head, searching for inconsistencies. Every time I brought up money or the inheritance, he deflected, joked, or gave me that same casual grin that now made my skin crawl. Then came the first real shock, a bank statement showing a transfer I didn't authorize, a sum missing that I hadn't noticed because I trusted him implicitly. My stomach dropped, my heart racing, and I felt an unfamiliar mix of betrayal and fear. Could he really be trying to take what wasn't his? I wanted to confront him immediately, but part of me hesitated. Something inside whispered that if I made a mistake, I'd lose more than money. I'd lose the sense of control I'd clung to for so long. I sat there in the dim kitchen light, staring at the documents, and thought, I've always protected him, but maybe he's planning to stab me in the back. The feeling of dread settled like a weight in my chest, and for the first time, I realized this might be bigger than I ever imagined. The next evening, I decided I couldn't ignore it any longer. I found Liam in the living room, sprawled on the couch, scrolling on his phone like nothing was wrong. My hands were shaking as I held the bank statement in front of him. Liam, what is this? I asked, my voice tight with a mix of anger and disbelief. His eyes flicked up briefly, then quickly back to the screen. What? It's just a transfer, he said, his tone light, almost mocking. No, it's not just a transfer, I snapped. This is from my inheritance, the money Grandma left me. How could you even... I stopped, trying to keep my composure. His grin widened, casual, disarming. Relax, man. You're overreacting. I thought you'd understand. Family sticks together, right? His words cut deeper than any insult could. He leaned back, arms behind his head, as if daring me to call him out further. I felt my chest tighten, and for a moment, I froze. My parents had always taught me to trust family, to forgive, to protect. But this wasn't carelessness or a mistake. This was deliberate. And yet, when I tried to involve them, my parents just shrugged. He's your brother. Don't take it personally, Dad said. Their blind trust in him made me feel utterly alone. Liam continued to speak, now softer, almost pleading. Look, I need this. I'll pay it back eventually, I promise. I could hear the manipulation in his voice, the way he tried to twist my empathy into compliance, but I couldn't, not anymore. I left the room, heart pounding, trying to process the betrayal. Part of me wanted to scream, to demand justice, but another part knew I had to be smart. I couldn't confront him again without proof. I needed evidence. Sitting alone in my bedroom, staring at the ceiling, I realized this was bigger than I had ever imagined. Liam wasn't just careless. He was scheming, and I had no idea how deep it went. That night, I made a decision I'd been avoiding for months. I needed proof. Not feelings, not suspicions, proof. I started digging through financial records, combing through emails, text messages, even old receipts. Every small inconsistency I'd brushed off before suddenly made sense in a terrifying pattern. Liam wasn't just reckless. He had been deliberately trying to access my inheritance. My stomach twisted with a mix of anger and disbelief. How could my own brother betray me like this? As I sifted through the documents, I found messages between him and some obscure loan companies I'd never heard of, asking for transfers that I had unknowingly covered. But the real kicker came when I discovered falsified paperwork. He had been fabricating debts, making it look like he owed more than he did, all to get at what was legally mine. My hands trembled as I read the last line of a contract he'd tried to submit to the bank. Authorized by Liam for immediate transfer from Michael's account. My vision blurred. The midpoint twist hit me like a punch to the gut. Not only had he been lying to me, but he had also manipulated our parents. He'd spun the story so convincingly that Mom and Dad thought they were helping a son in trouble, while in reality, he was siphoning off what I'd earned through years of hard work. I sank onto my bed, chest tightening, the weight of betrayal pressing down like a boulder. I felt hollow, used, and utterly alone. I couldn't even bring myself to yell at him yet. I had to be strategic. But the emotional toll was immediate. I felt rock-bottom despair. I realized that all the trust, all the sacrifices I'd made for family, had been exploited. Every late night at work, every skipped meal, every dollar I lent him, and for what? I curled into myself, staring at the dim glow of my laptop, feeling the enormity of the situation. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was emotional, psychological, and deeply personal. And for the first time, I understood that if I didn't act, I could lose everything, including the last shred of control I had over my own life. I spent the next week in a haze, barely sleeping, barely eating. Every moment I wasn't working, I was reviewing the evidence I'd gathered, organizing files, screenshots, bank statements, and the falsified contracts Liam had tried to pass off as legitimate. I knew I couldn't confront him without backing it all up. One wrong move, and he could weasel his way out. And this time, I wouldn't forgive him. I booked a meeting with a lawyer I trusted, someone who had handled family disputes before, and laid everything out. "He's not just careless," I said, my voice tight. "He's intentionally trying to take what's mine." The lawyer's eyes narrowed as she reviewed the documents. "We can stop him," she said, "but you'll need patience and precision." Meanwhile, Liam remained blissfully unaware. He walked around the house like a king in his domain, bragging about imaginary achievements and joking about his next emergency. I heard him talking to Mom in the kitchen one morning, saying, "Don't worry, I've got Michael wrapped around my finger. He'll cover it." My blood ran cold. He actually believed he was untouchable. Every small interaction became a test of patience. I had to act normal, maintain my role as the responsible, forgiving brother, while secretly fortifying my defense. I updated the lawyer daily, drafted letters, double-checked all legal documents, and even set alerts on my accounts to prevent unauthorized transfers. The tension in the house became almost palpable, though Liam remained unaware of how close I was to striking back. At night, I lay awake, listening to the quiet hum of the street outside, feeling a mixture of fear and determination. I replayed every slight, every manipulation, every smile that had hidden deceit. My heart pounded with anticipation and anger. I realized, with a grim sense of satisfaction, that the tables were about to turn. Liam thought he was safe, untouchable, and invincible, but he had no idea I was preparing to cut off every avenue he had to my inheritance. And as I drifted off to a restless sleep, I couldn't help but wonder, would he suspect that his reign of entitlement was about to end? By now, I had begun to feel a subtle shift in the house. Liam's confidence, once unshakable, was starting to crack, though he didn't realize it. I started dropping small hints, carefully and deliberately, about how my finances were being monitored, about the lawyer reviewing contracts, and the precautions I had put in place. "I double-checked the accounts today," I said casually one morning, while he poured cereal. "Better safe than sorry, right?" He forced a laugh, but I caught the flicker of worry in his eyes. I began subtly manipulating conversations, steering them toward his financial responsibilities while maintaining my calm exterior. Whenever he boasted about some new plan or scam, I responded with vague, knowing glances, asking just enough questions to make him uneasy. I could see the cracks forming, the nervous tics, the rushed explanations, the way he started checking over his shoulder when I was nearby. For the first time, I realized the power of quiet control. I didn't have to yell, threaten, or fight. Just letting him know I was aware was enough. The tension in the air grew heavier every day. Late at night, I could hear Liam pacing in his room, muttering under his breath, tossing and turning as he worried about accounts, transfers, and permissions. My parents still remained blissfully ignorant, though Mom occasionally raised an eyebrow at Liam's strange behavior. I kept that suspicion simmering, letting the anxiety do its work. The thrill of psychological leverage mixed with a lingering unease in me. I had to be careful. One misstep, one careless comment, and he might realize I had enough evidence to ruin him legally. Yet, I couldn't deny the satisfaction in watching someone who had treated me with such entitlement begin to squirm. As I sat by the window that night, listening to the hum of the street, I knew the moment of confrontation was getting closer. Liam's arrogance had blinded him completely, and soon he would have no way to escape the consequences of his own deceit. But deep down, I wondered, would he fight back, or had I finally cornered him completely? The day of the hearing arrived, and I felt a mix of dread and anticipation. Walking into the courthouse, I could see Liam striding in, his usual cocky grin plastered across his face. He thought he could charm the judge, the lawyers, even me. I sat silently, files in hand, evidence neatly organized, every email, transfer, and falsified contract ready to dismantle him piece by piece. The courtroom smelled of polished wood and stale coffee, and I could hear my own heartbeat echoing in my ears. When the judge called our case, Liam tried his usual charm. "Your Honor, I'm just trying to survive here. My brother's being dramatic," he said, voice smooth, rehearsed. I felt my blood boil but kept my composure. Then I handed the lawyer the stack of documents I had prepared. Each one was a nail in his coffin: unauthorized transfers, fabricated debts, deleted messages, all time-stamped and undeniable. As the lawyer laid out the case, I watched Liam's confident expression begin to falter. His face drained of color, and he shifted uncomfortably in his chair. My parents, who had remained neutral for so long, stared at him in disbelief. Whispers rippled through the courtroom, friends, distant family, even the clerk noticing the evidence. The weight of years of betrayal, manipulation, and entitlement was finally exposed in public. Liam stammered, trying to deflect, trying to twist the story in his favor, but the evidence was airtight. Every attempt at charm, every excuse, every lie unraveled in front of the judge. I felt a cold sense of satisfaction as I realized that the brother who had tormented me with his recklessness and entitlement for years was now cornered, powerless. By the time the hearing adjourned, the tension was electric. I left the courtroom feeling a mixture of exhaustion and relief, knowing the verdict could be life-changing. But even as I walked past him, I saw the disbelief and panic in his eyes. He still didn't fully understand what had just happened, and I knew that when the judge's decision came down, nothing would ever be the same again. The courtroom was silent as the judge read the verdict. Every word felt like a hammer, striking through years of manipulation and deceit. "All claims by Liam against Michael's inheritance are hereby dismissed," the judge said firmly. "No transfers or access to these funds shall be allowed without Michael's explicit consent." My chest tightened with a mixture of relief and disbelief. After years of being the responsible one, after every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every quiet bailout of Liam's reckless debts, justice had finally been served. I could see Liam's face pale, his cocky grin completely gone. His lips trembled as he muttered under his breath, trying to deny the reality, but it was too late. The evidence had spoken louder than any charm or lie he could muster. Even my parents, who had been blind to the situation for so long, stared at him in shock, finally seeing him for what he was. I didn't," he stammered, voice cracking. No one intervened. No one defended him. The humiliation was complete, and I could see the weight of his arrogance crushing him in real time. I felt a surge of emotions: vindication, relief, and a strange kind of sorrow. It wasn't joy that I felt. It was the satisfaction of boundaries finally enforced. Liam had abused my trust, my loyalty, and my patience, and now he had nothing to manipulate, no money to siphon, no control over me. The courtroom murmurs grew louder as everyone digested the magnitude of the betrayal exposed publicly. As I gathered my things to leave, I caught Liam's eyes. Desperation, regret, disbelief, all reflected in that once cocky stare. I didn't need to say a word. The silence carried everything. I realized that the years of being the responsible, patient one had led to this precise moment. Him cornered, powerless, finally facing the consequences of his actions. Walking out into the crisp evening air, I felt a strange lightness I hadn't known in years. The tension that had weighed on me for so long was gone, replaced by a clarity that only comes when justice is served. And yet, even as I left the courthouse, I knew life wouldn't be the same for anyone, especially Liam. The days after the verdict felt surreal. Walking into the house, I noticed the subtle changes immediately. Liam avoided eye contact, slinking through rooms as if the walls themselves were judging him. My parents were quieter too, their expressions a mix of shock and shame as they slowly began to understand the depth of what had been happening all these years. The whispers and glances that had haunted me were replaced by acknowledgement. Finally, they were seeing the consequences of enabling him. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of calm in my own home. I started organizing my finances without fear, reclaiming control over the money that had been mine all along. I set firm boundaries with Liam, who tried weak apologies, empty words that I didn't even entertain. I realized trust, once broken, cannot simply be repaired, and I refused to let him manipulate me again. There was no vindictiveness in my actions, only clarity and self-respect. Even my own reflection started to change. I felt empowered, no longer the exhausted scapegoat or the quiet provider. Every late night I had worked, every sacrifice I had silently borne, suddenly felt validated. I didn't need anyone to pat me on the back. The proof was in the boundaries I had established, and the justice that had been served. Life slowly began to take on a new rhythm. I pursued small joys I had neglected. Weekend hikes, quiet mornings with coffee, the freedom to make decisions without fear of exploitation. Liam's absence in decision-making was palpable, but it wasn't a loss. It was relief. I had built my life on responsibility, and now I could finally enjoy the rewards of it. Still, there were lingering emotions, resentment, disappointment, and a cautious hope that my family could recalibrate their sense of fairness. I had to remind myself that healing was a process, not an instant fix. And as I sat by the window that evening, watching the sun dip behind the trees, I realized that my journey toward peace and self-respect had truly begun. But even as the house grew quieter, I couldn't shake the feeling that the next challenge, personal or familial, was lurking just beyond the horizon. I've spent the last few weeks reflecting on everything that happened. Sitting alone in my room, I realized just how much this ordeal had changed me. Not in bitterness, but in clarity. I finally understand my own worth and the limits I will allow others to cross. Liam's schemes, his entitlement, and his manipulation no longer hold power over me. For the first time in my life, I feel completely in control of my own future. I've started setting clear boundaries with my family. I help where I choose, not where I am expected. And every time Liam tries to insert himself into discussions about money or responsibility, I remember the courtroom, the evidence, and the way justice finally exposed him. There's no satisfaction in revenge for its own sake, but there is empowerment in knowing that deceit cannot touch me again. I've also found a strange sense of peace with my parents. They've begun to see me differently, not just as the responsible son, but as someone who refuses to be taken advantage of. It's awkward, yes, and there's still tension when Liam is around, but there's also a newfound respect. I no longer carry the weight of everyone else's mistakes. I carry only my own. The inheritance, once a source of potential conflict, now symbolizes more than money. It's proof that careful choices, patience, and steadfast integrity can withstand betrayal. I'm not bragging. I'm just stating a fact I've earned. And for the first time, I feel like the person Grandma had hoped I would become. Resilient, cautious, and fiercely independent. Walking through the house one evening, I realized something else. I'm free. Free from manipulation. Free from fear. And free to build a life that I choose. Liam's presence no longer shadows my decisions. I can finally breathe, think, and plan for myself without looking over my shoulder. I close my eyes and smile, because this chapter is mine. The betrayal, the sleepless nights, the manipulation, it all led to this. I am no longer just the responsible son. I am the son who learned, who fought, and who finally won. And this time, nothing, not even my own blood, can take that away from me.